David Cone has a new book. It's called Full Count, The Education of a Pitcher. He wrote with great journalist Jack Curry. And David Cone, I believe I was correct. You won 5 World Series titles?
Yes.
Where are the rings?
I keep them in storage. Yeah, I'm an airhead. I might lose them, so I only charity events I break them out. But I'll leave it on the hotel bed, on the nightstand.
But they're kind of gaudy looking.
They're hard to wear. They really are, and they've gotten bigger over the years. Every year there's another topper on top of another one.
Do you know anybody who lost a World Series ring?
Oh yeah, you see them on eBay every now and then too, and I lost it, and it's just somebody's trying to sell it somewhere.
Yeah. They tell you they lost it. If you could only keep one, what ring?
I would keep the 98 ring. The 98 Yankees won 125 games, lost 50 at the end of the day. It's in the argument, maybe top 5 teams of all time. Certainly the entire roster. We had Strawberry on the bench, Tim Raines on the bench that year, a young kid named Homer Bush. It was the deepest team I've ever been a part of.
But you also, the Yankees changed that whole bullpen routine when you had Wetland. So Mo is he's the guy who was going to come in prior to Wetland come in. Ramiro Mendoza came in for Mo. Like that sort of changed baseball when you had a hammer coming in before the hammer.
It really did. And you go back to 1996 when Rivera, as you said, was setting up Wetland.
Amazing.
That was probably Mariano's best year. He pitched over 100 innings. We used him 2 or 3 innings at a time. And in Game 6 of 96 in the World Series against the Braves, when Mariano Rivera came in the 6th inning, the game over. We just knew it. We had the lead. Joe Girardi hit a big triple off of Greg Maddux to give us a lead early in that game. And the minute Mo got in that game that early, we knew that this game's over.
There are certain players in certain sports where they were automatic. Kareem, when he'd take his sky hook. Rivera fits in there that it just felt like whenever he went to the mound that it was over. Even though, it wasn't. He lost some tough games. Red Sox, he lost to the Diamondbacks. But I don't know is there another baseball player you can think of where you just sort of said it's automatic?
Yeah, he was so efficient. His control, the combination of movement and velocity was just so good. I mean, most pitchers, and we talked about it earlier, Dan, and anytime you start twisting your wrist and start making the baseball move, you lose velocity, and Rivera was the exception. He still threw the ball 95 miles an hour that cut in on left-handed batters about 6 inches, so we've really never seen somebody with that combination of movement and velocity and precision.
Mark Grace once told me that if you're not cheating, you're not trying. Do you believe that?
Well, there's gamesmanship. There's blurred lines there, certainly in the baseball world and all the unwritten rules.
Now, what would be
years.
Gamesmanship for you on the mound? Like, how far would you stretch gamesmanship?
Well, I would not have an emery board in my back pocket, and try to scuff the ball. But if I threw one in the dirt and I got a nice scuff on it, I knew what to do with it. So to me, that's gamesmanship.
What do you do with it when you know you have a scuff?
Well, with the scuff, it depends on which side of the ball you hold the scuff. If the scuff is perfectly located on the ball, you put it on the left side, it dives to the right. So it goes the opposite way. The movement on the pitch will move the opposite way of the scuff.
Let's say you got something on your glove that all of a sudden is a little sharper than you probably thought it was going to be or should be.
That's cheating. That
is cheating. Okay. All right. Okay. And pine tar.
There's blurred lines again there. The pine tar is really a big issue nowadays. We used to think that pine tar just helped you in cold weather. It didn't improve your spin rate. Well, now we know it does, and that it's been proven with some of the new technology that a little extra sticky stuff on your fingers can help your curveball break a little better, a little sharper.
Where would you hide it?
I had it on my belt, had it on my glove. I got to cop out here. It's true. I did.
No,
I cheated. Okay, I did. I cheated. I did.
No, there's a lot of pitchers. I think it's rare when a pitcher doesn't.
Yeah,
cheat.
It's true. I mean, especially in bad weather, in cold weather, in April, or even in October sometimes. You can't feel. You can't feel the baseball, and the baseballs are pretty slick sometimes. This whole thing of rubbing up baseballs with Mississippi mud or Delaware mud now, wherever it's from. But there's no consistency to it. It's remarkable. In today's day and age, we're still getting a bucket of mud and trying to rub up baseballs, and they're all different, and some are darker than others, and it just makes no sense.
You talk about this in your book where, certain pitchers tip their pitches. It feels like every pitcher has a tell. Is that safe to say?
Yes, I think everybody has something, some obviously more discernible than others.
Like Clayton Kershaw has a tell, right?
I'm sure he does, yeah.
Who had the tell? Like it's weird if you know there's a tell and you're on the other team, and let's say you're friends with somebody. Do you tell the pitcher they have a tell if you're friends with them?
That's a tough one.
Have you?
When they became teammates, when they're on your side and then they finally fess up. And Tommy Herr was that guy for me. The second baseman for the Cardinals for years, just wore me out. And then when he came over and was a member of the Mets, it took him about 2 or 3 months before he finally came to me and told me, hey, you're tipping your pitches. This is what you're doing.
And how many years had you been tipping your pitches?
Oh, geez, probably the first 3 or 4 years of my career.
And what were you doing?
On breaking balls, usually you have the ball in your glove. And on breaking balls or splitters, I would drop the glove down and get the grip right there and then go back up over my head. And on fastballs, I would just immediately, because I already had the fastball grip, I would take the glove and no drop in the glove and just take it right over my head. It was that obvious.
Man, I remember Mark Grace, who's one of the great hitters of all time. He said that he had a friend who was a pitcher on the opposing team, and he told him because he was a friend. Even though it was going to probably hurt a lot of other people, he said he couldn't help, but he had to tell him.
Friendship, I guess. Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
That's the blurred lines there. I don't know. I mean, that's a tricky one.
Well, we've questioned Grace's sanity before. He's David Cone, and the new book is out. Why'd you decide to write a book?
Well, it was really Jack Curry's idea, and he came to me, and I love Jack. I mean, he's such a trustworthy, great journalist.
Very knowledgeable.
Kind of a pitching nerd, and, after being a broadcaster for 10 years, I have a little different perspective on things. So we kind of wanted to get current and then go back even to the Mets days and kind of revisit some of these issues and do a little different twist on an autobiographical style of book. And, it's honest. It's raw. I talk about some of the mistakes I made along the way and take you inside what I was thinking at the time.
Also, the relationship with your catcher is tricky because I might like you, but you're not the best catcher for me. How do you find the catcher that's best for you?
That is so important, so underrated, even in today's game. Even with some of the new metrics, you talk about framing ability or the value you can place on catchers nowadays. It goes much deeper than that. You almost have to be a psychoanalyst with flakes like me on the mound. I mean, we go into some of my meltdowns on the mound. I mean,
why did you melt down so much?
It was just the emotional nature, the makeup of any person, any pitcher. Sometimes you're under, you wait a week to pitch, and in 5 minutes your week is ruined sometimes, and it turns you into a lunatic on the mound sometimes. And it's nothing like a starting pitcher in all of sports. So much responsibility every pitch. Plus, you have so much dead time. You've got to wait to pitch, so it can make you a little nutty at times.
What's the one that stands out that you'd love to take back?
Boy, there's so many. But, I am the guy who argued with an umpire at first base and allowed 2 Atlanta base runners to score. Not 1, 2. 2 scored. And they were the slowest runners in the history of the game, Dale Murphy and Ernie Witt.
Why?
I screamed it. He was out. Charlie Williams was the first base umpire, longtime umpire.
Yeah.
He finally told me, he said, while you're arguing with me, the second runner just scored. And I went.
All right. Now clear some of this stuff up. You didn't have a baseball team in high school?
Did not. The school didn't field a team, so I played in a summer league that was a college league when I was 15. So playing against 21 and under at 15 years old.
You spent 5 years in the minors. You got called up with the Royals, but you got traded to the Mets because of behavioral issues.
Well, I still have those same behavioral issues. To tell you, nothing's really changed. But I butted heads with a lot of pitching coaches, and I think that's kind of a theme in the book. That's okay. And I'm sure in your career you've done the same thing with producers or directors or you name it.
You got a question.
And the pushback is okay. And they tried to change my style all the way. They didn't want me dropping down, throwing sidearm. They wanted my arm angle up top. They tried to change a little wrist break that I had in my delivery, and all these things were natural and I thought were important. And I pushed back, got a reputation for being kind of a rebel, and that sent me to the Rebel Mets on the heels of the '86 World Series.
And then you threw a perfect game against the Expos. What do you remember about that perfect game?
Well, I remember warming up before the game. It was Yogi Berra Day at Yankee Stadium, and it was all about Yogi. So
Don Larson was there?
Don Larson was there. It was just a happy-go-lucky day at Yankee Stadium. Yogi finally healed with his problems with George Steinbrenner. It was about 15 years for Yogi to be away from the Yankees. And, I just it was so happy-go-lucky. I wasn't the story. I was carefree, and in some ways it was a great distraction for me just to think about Yogi and not worry about pitching.
You were always known as a prankster. That was when your curveball and your prank ability is what I knew about you when I was around that team. What's the best prank you ever pulled?
I can't really.
Oh, you can't do that one?
Yeah. There's some.
Are you up there with Greg Maddux?
Maddox is dirty too. He's definitely got.
Okay.
I'm not quite on Maddox's level, or Roger McDowell even. And, was pretty good.
Give me one for air. You got a prank for air.
Oh, geez. Yeah, there was one. Okay, the 2000 Subway Series. The middle 3 games were at Shea Stadium. We're playing the Mets. And George Steinbrenner rearranged the whole furniture at Shea Stadium. He wanted Yankee emblems on the chairs. He hated that we were sitting in Mets chairs. So he brought a moving truck over, all the furniture. He sat there, and there's a row of cables for the television on the floor. And I went to George, and I said, Those aren't supposed to be here. The Mets, they're bugging us. They're stealing our signs, George. And he bit hook, line, and sinker. He got down on his hands and knees, started yanking those cables. And then he was going to go complain to Bud Selig, the commissioner. And then he looked at me, and I was red-faced and laughing. And he charged at me. George ran at me. He got real beat red face, and he got me in a hammerlock. And
Wait. George Steinbrenner got you in a headlock during the World Series.
Yes, he did. In the middle games at Shea Stadium. And then he started laughing, and he said, "You better be ready to pitch, young man." And
have you told that story before?
Yeah, well, no, I've told different versions of that story, but not the full extent of it.
Wow. So here's one of the most powerful guys in baseball, and he's your boss, and he got you in a headlock.
He did.
What are you thinking?
It was a playful headlock, but it was, he got me in a, kind of...
Sort of playful.
More like a noogie, almost like a noogie.
And then, how long did you room with David Wells?
Just that 1 year in '98. It really was that 1 year.
That was probably best for both of you. It
was best. I mean, that was a crazy year. We every time we went on the road, we stayed away from the team hotel. And I made this arrangement with Torey. Torey didn't know we were staying away from the team hotel, but I told Torey, let me have Boomer. I'll keep him out of jail, because he was driving Torey crazy that year. And I said, I got him. This is my guy. I got him. And then we became great friends that year and had some great parties on the road, and actors, musicians would show up. And
I know Charlie Sheen showed up.
Yeah, Charlie Sheen definitely was part of that.
How did that go?
Charlie, I mean, I think he was probably in the middle of some of his issues, or if there ever was not issues.
Knowledgeable baseball guy.
Great baseball fan. Really, he was so good to us, and Boomer and him really clicked. They seemed to see eye to eye on a lot of issues.
Metallica?
Yeah, Lars. David Wells named his kid Lars after the drummer from Metallica, Lars.
Anybody else show up?
One night, Matthew McConaughey showed up and some of his friends, and we did not play. We didn't bang
bongos.
No bongos.
No naked bongos.
No naked bongos. No, but he was great too. He was a big baseball fan. A lot of fun.
Do you believe that Boomer was hungover when he threw his?
I think Boomer's probably hungover right now.
Yeah, he was always fascinating. I mean, and plus, he was one of those guys who told you whether you wanted to hear it. He told it to you.
No filter at all with Boomer. And, he's got a big heart. He's a good guy once you get to know him, but he's a rebel. I mean, the stories of him and his mother, Attitude Annie, was...
and she was in the Hells Angels?
Yes, she was. She was the girlfriend of the leader of the San Diego chapter of Hell's Angels. So that was his Little Leagues. His Little Leagues was all hike. You can show up to a 12-year-old Little League game, and it's all bikers, and there's Boomer pitching.
You're going to get the call, I think, if the Hell's Angels are there rooting for you. You might have gotten the call.
Exactly.
If your mom was in the Hell's Angels. I know we talk about some of the personality stuff here, the peripheral stuff here, but if you want to know about pitching, and this is good, bad, and ugly that David, he shares a lot here. The education of a pitcher. The book is called Full Count, and Jack Curry is one of the great baseball writers of our time. So it's been likened to kind of a Bull Durham feel to this book, where there's a lot of stories in there, but there's a lot of truth and a lot of insight in there as well. And I wish you well with the book, David.
Thank you, Dan. Great to be on with you.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune into Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV. Stream for free on BR Live or download the Dan Patrick Show app.